Okay, hey everyone, here we here we fucking go again. Misery Loves Company. I think this is Rudy, is this the seventh week that we're doing this? I think.
Oh, yeah, 6 or 7. I'm not sure which.
7 consecutive weeks. So as usual, yeah, maybe it's the sixth. I think it's the seventh though, for some reason. I don't fucking know. Anyway, it's been like 2 months. So Uh, as usual, we've got a bunch of really cool transgressive and outsider and I don't know, weird authors here to read. And I'm not going to belabor this intro here. First up is Sam Phillips with, I think you've got two pieces for us, Sam.
Yeah, I've got two.
As always, I'll be putting links to these pieces in the chat and on Twitter as the person reads. Which one did you think you'd read first?
I'll I'll start with the Lady in the Hall. Okay, just go whenever.
Cool. Yeah, and this is a piece that was published on Misery Tourism, right?
Yeah,
So we
yeah, for
published this
the
one.
yeah, you guys put it out for the murder ballads.
I always try to get the plug in whenever I can. Okay, yeah, take it away.
It's called The Lady in the Hall. I often hear my neighbors fight, falling asleep to dimming light, those constant beggars in the halls, and loud shouts heard through the walls. Her eyes are sunken, low and frail, the lady in the hall, the lady that's pale. The boyfriend I have yet to see, yet she offers his child, his boy, to me. Still, addicts are predictably reckless, and to secure a night's rest, I knocked and ran, leaving behind $200 at their door. Now they don't live there, or anywhere, and I don't sleep anymore. And that was it.
That's I love that one. I love like just the we published that as part of our murder ballads theme, and I love like the musicality of that piece and like just the kind of like subtle implied menace of it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was going for. It was an idea for like a short story, but I thought it worked better as a poem.
It's weird to say this about something that isn't music, but it was very atmospheric.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely
And
feels
your
ominous.
next one was published over at Expat, right? And
Yeah, this week.
Oh, so this is a fresh one then.
Yeah,
Cool.
this is a sort of cosmic horror flash.
I love that you explained it too, by the way.
Yeah, I didn't really give the cues as explicitly as I should have, I don't think, but I'll go ahead and start it. It's called The Curators. So it opens with a quote from Parmenides. Oh, wait, hang on. Yeah. Give me the power to produce fever, and I'll cure all diseases. Parmenides. Year 1. The primary commandment of those who curate is that one must believe in eternal life. The secondary commandment is lesser life curates primary life. The tertiary commandment is forever iterate. The quaternary commandment is only two are required for eternity. I seek to join, to leave the lesser many and take shelter. And this entry is from year 4. I am affiliate. I may handle the vulgar part, but I may not attempt to direct. I archive to assimilate. Year 8. I have passed. I have meditated in its presence. By all change ceasing, I feel change. I will don these robes for the rest of my, if allowed, uneternal life. I am told to contemplate. Year 20. I meditate. The One rests at temperatures which kill secondary life. The One is kept stable. Minute weights allowed thawhood for communion and prayer. The eldest allowed the privilege of accumulation and exchange. He sheds his robes, the door shuts. Our elders are centurions, our eldest farther. Year 70. I am brethren. I may be engulfed. I volunteer, for there is no greater privilege. There is no time too far. Patience runs eternal. Each day, the vulgar parts of the One arrived and are thawed by initiates for the archives. The sacred jails ran, inspected, the fate of the vulgar part determined, to remain continuous or be discarded. Patience runs uneternal. Uneternity. I am elder and initiate. The second has approached. I run the jail for the newest initiate. He will later assimilate. As will all. I shed my robe. I commune with the One. The Philopodia grasp my hand, and I expand outwards in all directions. I learn of our ancestor, living and dead, Henrietta, before I cease to become and simply be, then not, both being and not, and neither.
Damn.
That's that one.
Damn.
That one I really like.
Yeah. Oh, wait.
The name Henrietta has always like spooked me out for some reason. So that like being towards the end is just like, ugh.
Cool. You guys like, some people like, I don't think Manuel got it when I first sent it to him and I had to explain it. Were you guys able to like follow along with what was going on there?
I definitely like I got like the kind of like cult like transcendent vibe, and I like how it ends on like that note of kind of like transcendence, but I'm terrible with like comprehending things the first time I hear them, so I'm probably a bad, like person for that. But I know that you like followed up with some information on Twitter, so I am curious to read that now in the context of having heard the story finally.
It's got really
Yeah.
esoteric vibes, like Crowley or like that kind of stuff. I'm not sure if it has anything to do with that, but
I was reading Parmenides when I edited it, or the Plato dialogue Parmenides. That's why it talks about the One.
oh, okay. Very cool.
Yeah, I mean, did you want to kind of, if you did post something on Twitter, kind of breaking it down, you can feel free to like read that off now or talk a little bit about that. You read two pretty short pieces, so you still have plenty of time if you kind of want to, yeah, like break it down for us.
Right. Let me find it. Sorry, I've been posting a lot the past few days. I found it. It's about a It's about a Parmenidean cult that was radicalized in a scientific revolution. Outside the church are sick masses. The church is on the outside medicinal. It has multiple branches like all churches, but this particular sect is at the heart of the cult. One of the tenets is only two are required for eternal life. Cancer requires at least 2 mutations. A toy example, 1 mutation that inhibits apoptosis and 1 that prevents cell recognition. Generally, after these 2 mutations, farther mutation is exponential. While in the outer appearance of the sect the one a la Parmenides, is essentially a harmless, contemplative, metaphysical doctrine. The one cannot have shape, as shapes can be divided. The one does not move. To move is for there to be a place that isn't the one, etc. But the sect desires to make the one an apparent reality. Its church is a lab, where it maintains a large mass of Henrietta Lacks cancer cells in pseudostasis to farther curate its mutations until it will simply function on its own when released and swallow all. Other aspects of the cult: they worship genetic makeup. They have extremely long lives due to regular interactions with the mass. They maintain their health perfectly to assimilate when they die. The mass extended to the narrator. The moment it touched the narrator with the Philopodia, he became one with it. That's why he expands outward. The Philopodia immediately extend from his body. It ends with a degenerate Parmenidean contradiction, both being and not and neither. That's about it.
Leave it to you to have a bunch of science shit going on behind the scenes and all cells and stuff. But so is it like a cancer that kind of grows out of control, but like intentionally to consume everything else?
Yeah, they're trying to like make the one, but it's just a mass of cancer cells. It's and there's some like weird, interesting metaphysics I could have gone into with that. Like, if every cell is different than every other, then by them all being different in the same way, they're all the same, and whatnot, stuff like that.
That is a spooky fucking image of like a cancer cult. Yeah, that is that's quite an image.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the kind of the world building at play there. And I know Rudy and I are both suckers for that kind of world building, I think. And the also like the like religion as cancer sort of
Oh shit! I didn't even think of that. I didn't even
yeah.
think of that. That's true.
Or at least
That applies.
fanaticism as a sort of psychological cancer.
I love feedback that you get when it's like, I didn't even think of that interpretation.
So Hestia, are you with us still?
Yeah. Hello. Can you hear me? Am I coming
Yeah,
in fine?
I can hear you loud and clear. So you are up next, and you're actually, usually you write poetry, and in the past you've always shared poetry with us, but this is a short fiction piece, isn't it?
Yeah. It's the first one I've really felt confident in, and I shared it with I workshopped it a little bit with Urban Maoism and Manny from Expat.
Oh, cool.
So
Cool.
two quotes that I would like to read out before the story
Absolutely.
are this one's from a hadith. The people of paradise will not regret except one thing alone, the hour that passed them by and in which they made no remembrance of Allah. And then the other one is from a medieval Muslim theologian. The necessary connection of movement and time is real, and time is something the soul constructs in movement. And I just like those quotes partially inspired a lot of things in this. This is titled tentatively, Fate is a Straight Line Towards Death. Written in the book of Revelations is the following passage. It performed great signs, even causing fire to come down from heaven to the earth in full view of the people. I was always a devout young man. The local doctor in our village in Georgia always said that my piety was due to something wrong in my mind. He said what I would view as signs from the heavens or patterns leading one to understand further into the beauty of the divine were just some kind of delusion or hallucination. I told him he was just another sinner on this earth who was too caught up in his own pride to submit to God. In my village, I was an aide within our church. I lived with my mother and two sisters, and my father died in the Russian Civil War in defense of socialism. And my life was simple. I prayed, worked, survived. Then the war with the Germans began, and I was another young man to be conscripted. When the men of the NKVD arrived at my door, they handed me a gun, a uniform, and told me I was going to be sent to distant Kiev to defend it from the incoming offensive of the Germans. The never-ending train ride to Kiev from my town of Vielle were some of the most tense days of my life, constantly assaulted by visions and signs that I would die there. My bowels may as well have been the void of Tartarus. My psyche was fragmented and I could never sleep. I was never at peace. Every abnormal sound the train made was a gunshot in my ears. This metal beast was terrifying, and I was wasting away in its blackened, rusted gut. This must have been how Dante felt as he slowly descended down the dark path leading into hell. I endured these days of torturous limbo only through my faith in the Lord. My prayers to him created a ward around myself, a shroud of protection, as I waited to arrive in Kiev to face my death. One day, the train ceased to slither forth along its track. Then the NKVD officers came to fetch me. These were different men than before, and yet they looked the same. Their faces set in stone, their dead eyes, a palpable lack of love. They practically threw me out of the train. I shuffled over to where the other conscripts were haphazardly lining up. We were given our orders, given our equipment, told where we would be positioned, who would be in our squadron, and finally told when they estimated the German attack would start. 24 hours is what they told us, making all of us look around nervously. We may only have 24 hours left to live, even though some of us were as young as 16, and yet here we were, standing at the precipice of death's maw. The air had chilled and the morning sun had dimmed when those words were uttered, and we were given a countdown to our deaths. We all went to our assigned positions in absolute silence to prepare what remaining defenses needed to be laid. After our work was done, we were allowed to rest for the night. In the morning, we all ate our breakfast in crypt-like silence. It would be the last meal for thousands of these men around me, including myself. As I ate my meager meal of bread and soup, I thought back to the words my priest once told me. When death comes knocking, wishing to collect your soul, one mustn't fight him or fear him or scream for more time. God takes us when he takes us, and we should be honored that in his mercy, love, and grace, he would even allow us into his eternal kingdom. I whispered my prayers with these words in mind, prayers for the motherland, prayers for the soldiers around me, that God's grace shine upon them and shepherd their souls up to join his heavenly host. I prayed for my family, that they may never endure the mind-breaking horrors I knew would soon leave me dead. That's when the first mortar shot shook the building, just as fire and brimstone had when it struck Sodom. We were rushed out with our half-finished meals laid to rest, just as our souls soon would be. I was just another damned soul positioned to hold the first line of defenses. Exchanging glances with my fellow corpses, we had all made our peace with death. Officers shouted orders while men ran like rats into position. I was given a PTRD 41 and told to turn as many of the incoming tanks as I could into coffins. My heart raced like a rabbit's when chased by a fox. I could feel the adrenaline filling my body like water in a sinking ship. I prayed silently as we locked our gazes to the horizon, waiting for the first enemy battalion to appear. All that could be heard was the artillery and bombers raining down hellfire. Before I could even blink, a mortar shell rammed into the trench line only 50 feet away from me. The walking dead there were torn asunder as fate demanded. I never knew how haunting the scream of a man screaming, or how haunting the sound of a man screaming as he drew his final breath would be. By God, the screams were how I imagined the tortured souls in hell sounded. Even given the distance between myself and where the mortar had left only an absence, still the entrails of my fellow man rained down on me. This would only be the beginning of hell on earth as more and more of the mortars rang out, rending asunder dozens and dozens of men all around me, leaving just me and a few other pale-faced corpses alone. All I could do was pray, 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 and pray. Then the metallic hounds of hell appeared on the horizon. They barked and growled as they sent forth their devastating blasts of hellfire into our line. I locked my sights on one. I fired, 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 and fired. Each round piercing the hull as the swords of angels pierced the hearts of devils, dismembering the hell beast and condemning the men inside to a fiery death as the engine exploded within, bathing them in fire and turning the mechanical hell beast into a makeshift tomb. As I set my sights on another hound of hell, a mortar shell destroyed the very ground I stood on, ripping apart my body with its fangs. Yet I wasn't one of the lucky ones who got to be evaporated by the blast. I was left with half my body ripped off of me, and that's when my final vision began. I saw the battle for what it truly was, the beginning of the end times. The Germans were but the foot soldiers of the Antichrist sent forth to conquer the world and begin his 3.5-year-long rule before Jesus Christ, the Son of God, and the heavenly host of the Lord's angels came to fight the final battle, where the beheading of the Antichrist and Lucifer would occur, as well as the judging of the living and the dead, the saving of our souls and washing away of our sins like a white cloth cleaned of soot with water, snow, and sand. As my sight faded, the vision grayed, and the angel of death appeared before me, hand reaching out and waiting only for me to grab onto it. As my heartbeat slowed and my blood flowed out, staining the soil around me, I reached forth and grabbed the angel's hands. I felt myself whisked away, wrapped in a blanket of solace, smiling in my final moment, and wondered if my family would ever know of my death. The end.
Holy fucking shit. That's my holy fucking shit of the night. What really got me about this piece is you're taking what, like, on the kind of cosmic scale is one single relatively insignificant casualty in a vast war full of like casualties, and not even like someone who necessarily, there was no like profound act of heroism there. He's literally killed in the first battle that he's ever forced to go in, like in that he's ever forced to fight in, and yet like the whole thing is full of this kind of incredible like intertextual like spiritual like it's loaded with all this significance because of the like there are so many references to like to the Bible, to to Dante and so on and so forth. It like takes this one measly brief shitty life and fills it with this massive amount of significance, which I think is kind of what great literature does, frankly. So yeah, I love that piece.
Thank you. It's something that sorry, I'm kind of losing my words here. I appreciate that feedback, and I kind of like I intended for that. Like the random individual caught in something they don't fully understand and tries to rationalize it around what they know. However, like I didn't fully think about like what you were saying about blowing it up to be like this one shitty life is actually important on a cosmic scale, even though they didn't do anything really. Sorry, I'm kind of embarrassed now.
No, don't be. I mean, it was a fantastic piece, really.
Yeah, absolutely phenomenal use of imagery and layering in military tactical theory with heavy religious imagery. But for me, it's your intonations that are somehow both solemn and passionate that really drive home pieces like that and really elevate that to the next level. Absolutely incredible.
I second the note on the imagery. I really think it's cool how you've managed to create these worlds of images where like flesh and machine and spirit all sort of flow into one another. It's like there are these spheres that intersect at certain points, and it's, you just did a really good job of portraying that.
Thank you.
You're one of my favorite writers. Like, it's amazing. I'm so glad that you're like in the that I know
You're
you.
one of my favorite writers too, Eris. I really appreciate that compliment.
Thank you.
I just wanted to mention how much I really loved at the beginning that kind of moment of like agnostic stalemate between the narrator and the doctor, where it's like, oh, the doctor is telling me that I just have hallucinations, but I know that he's just a sinner, so like we both win if we're right. I think that's a really, I don't know. It's one of those things where you never want to be looking at it from both sides of the coin. And yet here we are.
I didn't actually think of that like at all. It's really cool that something came across like that. Yeah.
That's my favorite thing about this type of thing, because like it seems to happen all the time. Like people pick up on stuff and the person who wrote it is just like, oh, I never really thought of it that way. And it just like expands the whole piece in your own mind. So it's really worth like, you know, doing.
That happens to me all the time. I don't think about shit.
Same.
It's unconscious. It's the poesis transmitting through you.
There's this thing about how like Courtney Love said, like, I'm not psychic, but my lyrics are, and I feel like that can also be true with fiction and poetry.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And I think part of it is also just like on some level our brains are wired to find connection and find significance, right? So the act of writing is really kind of the act of chasing down those connections and that significance, whether it's conscious or unconscious. So I don't think it's and like, how many times have you been in conversation with someone and like even like made a joke without realizing you made a joke, and then the other person's like, holy shit, like that's so witty, how did you do that? And you're like, I have no fucking clue. Like just the synapses fired the right way at that moment and something like significant happened. And I think a lot of the times with art, that's like how it works. Anyway, Patrick, you're up next.
All right, cool. I'm just gonna be reading a short story.
Cool.
It's called Lena. It's up on Terror House. Yep. Shit. I'm late again. This is my third date in a row with Lena that I'll have shown up late to. I showed up 15 minutes early the first time we met. We got coffee at a little place on Carson Street called Delaney's. She wore a little red dress with white daisies on it. The dress hung just above her knees, modest enough to excite me over a challenge. She ordered her coffee black and teased me when I put cream in mine. I didn't know I agreed to go on a date with a woman. Thought you said you were a writer. Don't all writers drink their coffee black? Ever since then, I haven't really been focused much on punctuality. It seems like I am continuing the habit tonight. Lena will understand. She'll have to understand. Unless she doesn't, then shit. She is a beautiful woman, that Lena, with her sylvan features and azure blue eyes, accented by brown, almost black hair that has slight hint of curl to it, even when straightened, a smile a mile long, firm, muscular legs, a tight waist, perky tits plucked on the center of her chest, and a perkier ass to boot. I wonder if she has hair on her cunt tonight. Would she be uncomfortable if I asked her? I see no harm in it. Maybe I'll ask her between hello kisses. Lena, do you have a bush on your snatch? Or are you clean shaven like a schoolgirl? I need a cigarette to clear my head. My mind mills about Lacan's idea of objet petita. Asking her that was an awful idea. It is completely unnecessary for me to give up on this retroactive illusion of possible perfection that is going to linger in the atmosphere around Lena and I the entire night. I could picture the moment of ruination in my head so vividly. Yes, Pat, I shaved away my pubic hair this morning. and I stick my hand between her thighs, and there I feel it. Just a little stubble. Stubble that would be barely visible to the naked eye unless one knew it were there previously and were looking for it with a magnifying glass. How utterly disappointing that would have been. I better not ruin my night even before it starts. My cigarette is finished. I'm 15 minutes late. Lena is sitting at the bar. She has jeans on. This is the first night we have gone out together and she hasn't been wearing a dress. She must be starting to feel more comfortable around me. Tonight is going to be casual. What a pleasant start. Her taxicab yellow sweater had little balls of fabric hanging off of it. She looked as though she walked into the room through a door of sunsets, the great soul showering her with his radiance, licking at her heels with every step she took. Lena's face lights up like the sun when she sees me. I could swear her aura was causing the entire room to breathe in and out at a tempo that only she knew. Clementine orange streaks of color flashed in random intervals inside the neon yellow halo surrounding her head. The dingy light bar with its low-hanging ceilings and bright red upholstered stools and booths looked like it was brought into the current year with Lena sitting there, bathing every lucky Dick and Jane who happened to be customers at this fine little dive bar that night in the fire that flowed so freely from her manipura. She has a drink in front of her. I'm hoping it's her second. I'll catch up quickly. I walk up beside her. We exchange a kiss and brief hellos, how are yous? I make a waving motion directed down at the opposite end of the bar with my hands trying to get the attention of the bartender. I order her a shot of Jack Daniels and myself 2 shots of the same, plus a bottle of icy light. Lena gives me a funny look. It's like I got here when you did, I say to her between tossing the 2 shots down my throat. Let's move to a table or a booth or something. The bar's far too crowded to talk to you how I would like. I pinch her ass a little harder than she is expecting because she makes a high-pitched little yip sound and looks at me as if I were doing something that was going to get us into a lot of trouble. I grab our drinks and lead Lena to a booth on the left side of the bar. I think the man that was sitting catty corner across the bar from me knew Lena. From the way he looked at her, both longingly and as a piece of lost property that he's not able to reclaim. The way he never stopped looking at me, sizing me up like he was at the tracks trying to decide which horse to bet on, to the way Lena acted like that quarter of the room didn't exist at all. I wonder who the better lover is. I doubt it's him with those jealous green eyes. I am satisfied with that thought. If he is who my sexual prowess would be compared to tonight, then I have not a thing in the world to worry about. I make sure Lena is nice and fucked tonight. Not in a million lifetimes would I ever want to live as that man. Not if I could if I tried. I am far too deeply in love with cunt for that. Lena reaches her hand into my pants and grabs my cock under the table. That confirms it. They were lovers. Don't worry, darling. I am going to put on a show for you tonight. I come through her fingers while she whispered in my ear, I can't believe I'm doing this. I feel like such a whore. Oh my, you came already? Why didn't you say something? It's all over my hands now. What do you want me to do with this, huh? Like I care. That green-eyed motherfucker was watching us this whole time, watching Lena's arm move up and down while her hand slid up and down my prick. I don't think she noticed, though. She was still busy whispering nonsense and honey in my ear. I noticed, and I didn't much like it. I was not feeling like much of the exhibitionist tonight, and Lena was far too pretty for me to put up with behavior like that from someone I was certain had fucked her. Our glasses are empty. I'm going outside for a cigarette. I'll order us drinks at the bar on my way out. Hurry back, she said. I'll miss you. I grab both sides of her face and plant my open mouth over hers with a smack. Her tongue is in my mouth. My tongue is in her mouth. She tastes of sex. I tape of cheap Pittsburgh beer and cigarettes. Her lips are thin. Our tongue waltz. She runs her right hand through my hair, stops at the back of my neck, and runs her fingertips over the shaved part. I kiss her again. This time, our mouths are closed. We just sit there for a solid minute or two, not moving, bodies intertwined, lips locked, her hand on my neck, both my hands planted firmly between her thighs. Her breath is slow, warm, heavy on my cheek. I'm staring at Green Eyes. He is staring back at me. He knows that I know. I know that he knows. My cock is hard again. Our lips part. I kiss Lena on the top of her head. I'll be right back. Turning my back to her, I start off over the bar, fumbling to put my hat and jacket on while I walk. I put my chair between Green Eyes and myself and wait for the bartender to finish up the conversation he is having with the man 2 stools over. Something about Wahhabis in South America. I'm not paying much attention. Most days, I would weasel my way right into the middle of a conversation like this and start off monologuing, going off on one of the many rants on topics similar to this that I have been slowly refining over the years. This wasn't most days. I have 2 jade daggers driving deeper and deeper into my back every second I stand here. Order the drinks for the table and turn to Green Eyes. I know you fucked Lena, and I can tell you want to again. I got her all wound up. She'll screw anything tonight. I'm tired of you watching us like this, so I'll make you a deal. I'm going outside to smoke a cigarette. If you come out and kick my ass, I'll leave and she's all yours for the night. It'll be a nice little setup for you. Her all hot and bothered and having been ditched, left alone, ghosted. She'll definitely have something to prove to the world after that. You could have yourself a great lay. I didn't even wait for a response. I just walked outside, lit my cigarette, and started to smoke. Green Eyes never came outside. Walking back to my booth, I spot Lena first. Her arms and legs are both crossed over each other and her shoulders are slouched forward. Her face is twisted and contorted around the spot between the top of her upper lip and the bottom of her nose. Her mouth pursed. Her cheeks are flushed, pink, and raised. Her eyes are squinted. She is visibly uncomfortable. I get closer to the booth. Now I can see why. There is Green Eyes sitting practically on top of her, instead of coming out to fight me, that ugly little vermin, that slimy little slug, that conniving creature of cowardice. He went right to Lena and probably told her of my proposition. Do you have no moxie in you, no pride in your authority? Have you abandoned your manhood in the quest for coochie? Simp, beta, cuck. You can't try to orbit my woman, but I will shoot you out of the sky. I am now visibly agitated. Lena can see this. Green Eyes can see this. Lena can see this, and she has hidden apologetic waves ripple slowly, barely noticeable across the discomfort on her face. Where's my beer? I asked directed at Lena, but addressing the both of them. He drank it, she pointed with a tilt of her head to Green Eyes on her right. I wonder how that little bastard managed to slither his way behind her in the booth. I can tell by the way Lena is looking at me that she wants nothing more right now than to avoid some kind of conflict. Her aura has changed from a bright yellow with orange streaks and flashes in it to a soft, almost fuzzy-looking violet blue with blurry, muddy spots of magenta that for a brief moment jump into focus and drawing all your attention before losing it just as quickly. Green Eyes looks at me. The look on his face reminds me of the look that all of my little brothers would share when they were tattling on me for misbehaving to either my mother or my father when we were children. He doesn't say anything. He just looks at me like this. My blood is boiling. I want to clench my fist into a tight little ball and crack him on the bridge of his nose with a straight right, and maybe follow it up by a left hook from my elbow. I refrain. This is only the end of the second act. I don't want to reach the climax too soon. What you say to Green Eyes while we're up at the bar ordering drinks, Pat? It was Lena's turn to ask me the questions. Get ready for your show, baby. Here starts Act 3. I actually interjected upon the conversation Green Eyes, the bartender, and the man sitting at the end of the bar were having. I make a full body motion to point the man who was talking to the bartender before I'd ordered our last round of drinks. It was a rather boring and quick exchange, which I'm rather happy that I got out of so quickly. I really start to lay it on thick now. The bartender and the guy next to him were talking about the rise of Wahhabism in South America, something about how the Saudis were funneling hundreds of millions of dollars into building mosques on the continent. I said something along the lines of, we've been too busy fighting the Mujahideen over in the Middle East, focusing on defending Israel's borders from radical Islamic terrorism, that we failed to notice the rising tide of jihadis on our own border, which is when your buddy chimed in. He's not my buddy, Pat. Trust me. Lena felt the need to interrupt me to say that. She is falling for the trap I'm setting. Okay, I continue on with my act. That's when he chimed in and voiced his opinion on the subject matter. Better? I asked Lena. Better, she confirmed with a head nod. Now, how is it that you put it again? I take a long drag from my beer. Green Eyes just sits there staring at me, probably wondering where I plan on stopping this train at. Oh, that's right. You said how you wish the president would kill all those shit-skinned goat fuckers no matter where in the world they came from. And then that's when I knew it was the right time for me to get out of the conversation. So I took my leave and went and had my smoke. With that last little detail to my story, everything came together. Lena's face went from a look of obvious discomfort and hidden contrition to one of total disgust and revulsion. There is no remorse left on her face for having felt somewhat responsible for our current interaction with Green Eyes. All that is left are strobing lights that flash white-hot rage into the night. Lena looks as though she is smelling the world's rankest pile of shit. In this moment, with that look plastered on her face, I knew that I had won myself a great victory. No matter how much Green Eyes protests my story as being nothing more than a fabrication of my imagination, no matter how many appeals to their past he makes, it won't matter. Lena had heard a tale that confirmed all of the awful, horrible things she knew were true about this man, and no one alive or dead could convince her that any other truth existed in this world other than her own. Green Eyes was a piece of shit. Of course it would make sense that he was a racist too. God bless this postmodern world. In the midst of this protest, Lena gets up and starts to inch her way out of the booth next to me. Green Eye starts to get belligerent, spittle shooting out of his mouth with every syllable. His voice goes booming through the bar, and the rest of the room seems almost as if it's suspended in perpetual motion. Stillness surrounds us, silence, eyes focused on the spectacle we are becoming. He starts to yell profanities, motherfucking this and motherfucking that, calling me a liar and screaming about how full of shit I am, begging and pleading with Lena between the expletives. Finally, he turns to me, leans over the table, pokes a finger in my chest, and says, I should have came outside and kicked your ass when I had the chance, you fucking piece of shit. I agree with mostly everything he is saying. It's all true, more or less. Lena doesn't know that, though. Green Eyes, in the midst of his rage, grabs Lena's arm and stops her from fully leaving the booth. My blood boils. You can see the steam shooting out of my ears. If it hadn't been for Green Eyes bellowing, you could hear the whistles as well. Lena is standing 1 foot in the booth, 1 foot out, shivering. She's almost completely slumped over and looks like she could fall at any moment. There is water welling up in her eyes, and she looks like she's on the verge of bursting into tears and collapsing simultaneously. Green Eyes is seated next to Lena, left hand wrapped around Lena's right arm, his grip constantly tightening and readjusting. His eyes are glazed over, looking as if no one is home. There is a little spittle running down the left side of his chin. His shirt is untucked, all except for right above his belt buckle, and there are veins bulging out of his forehead and neck. I am standing at the head of the table, a foot away from Lena. Green Eye's smug mug is less than an arm's length away. Let go, you'll get that chance to kick my ass. I take my jacket off and toss it on the table. Lena starts to screech like a banshee, flailing about violently. Let go, let go, let go, let go, let go. At this point, we've made a big enough ruckus to attract 2 hefty-looking bouncers and 1 very drunk, burly, overweight, bearded man around 30 who is wearing a brown leather jacket and a Pittsburgh Pirates baseball cap. Green Eyes, let's go. Lena immediately dashes behind me, clutching onto my shirt. I feel her entire body quivering. Her breasts are pressed tightly against my back. The metal rings on her nipples are hard even through both of our clothes. I know she isn't wearing a bra. She puts her left leg between my legs. My cock smacks against the front of my jeans. I pick my jacket off the table and use it to hide my erection. The security guards are between me and him now. They're arguing with each other. Neither one of them are paying us any mind. The drunk man in the ball hat is still lingering around, listening in. I turn to Lena and grab her by the shoulders reassuringly. Everything's all right, baby. Let's get out of here. I take her by the hand and lead her past the bar through the door and out into the parking lot. We walk past the line of cars and down the street into the alley where I parked. As soon as we get into it, my car, Lena breaks down into violent sobs. In between her wailing, she keeps apologizing to me for having ruined our night. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I just never expected that would happen. I'm so sorry. She is repeating this over and over again. She definitely won't be upset about me being late for the 3rd date in a row after all that nonsense. I'm sure she has almost entirely all but forgotten about my streak of tardiness. I scored myself the 2nd great victory of the night. Act 3 of tonight's show is ended. Now it's time for the final act. I take Lena in my arms, consoling her, petting her head. I don't care who he was, baby. You don't have to bother telling me. She kisses me. Her lips, her cheeks, her entire face is wet. She tastes salty. I slip my tongue in her mouth and she lets me run it around hers while she holds it still. I am going to get fucked by a scorned woman tonight. And that's where I'm going to leave it off.
I love that.
So if you like it, you can finish the rest later when this concludes.
A cliffhanger, right?
Yeah.
No, that was a
I read.
lot of fun. There are some pieces that are like compulsively readable because of the way the author handles like pacing and details and stuff, and that definitely falls into that category. I also like the narrator's basically psychopathy. It's a really great portrait of an antisocial personality, I think.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I was going for. Yep. Well, thank you.
Yeah, I have to say, I had my video off because I was eating dinner while I was listening to that, but that ended and was really good, so I want to commend you. And that had like everything. It had the violence, like the horniness, like the social commentary. So you said that was published on Terror House?
Yeah, it actually won submission of the month in February.
Oh, cool. So are you gonna publish the continuation also on Terror House?
Well, that's an excerpt. Well, it's one short story in a book that I've written that's actually been submitted for publication at a couple places, and I'm waiting to hear back on that.
Oh, cool, cool.
Yes.
Yeah, that's definitely. I think it's definitely gonna work out for you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, awesome. You'll have to keep us posted. Let me know when it's accepted, and if you get a pre-order link or something, I'd be
Yeah,
happy to
well,
tweet it out.
actually, I do have a chapbook coming out next year through Terror House called Specters of Saturn.
Sweet.
When that goes up and I get more details about that, I can definitely send you something over.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Anything we, especially with authors that we've published or that we interact with, like it's always good to know when someone has a book coming out so that we can promote it, give it just a little bit of a bump there, you know?
Yeah, well, I really appreciate that, man. The Trial of Moloch and Dionysus, it was the third poem that I read. The first week on here, I read the excerpt from it. That's like the flagship poem in the books that's coming out.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, cool, definitely. The piece that was that you published with us a few months ago, is that in there?
No, that's a different thing that I'm working on that has a little different vibe. It's a little more darker and a little more kind of like, there's a more lonely feel to it.
Gotcha, gotcha. Cool, cool. So, Eris, I think you're up next, and you're going to read something from a zine. That's all I've been told so far. I'll turn it over to you.
This is the last one of a zine I made in 2012 or 11. Like, it's really old. Like, and it's the last copy, and it's just like it looks like shit. And anyway, okay. Like it even has like the 92nd Street Sweetheart thing as a.
Oh wow! So is this something that you put together yourself and kind of distributed a while ago, or?
Oh, I mean, yeah, like a decade ago, you know.
Wow! Holy shit! Okay.
So just keeping that in mind, though, when I read this, that it's old, so it might suck. Okay. Memoir of a former time traveler. The presidents had long learned how to time travel. Come on, Bush? That fucking election? This is way before Trump. God, you know it. All those crazy mix-ups, the way he jumbled his words. Too much time travel. Fucks you up worse than dope. Worst thing is, nobody believes you. They're not allowed to. National security. You figure it out. You know those days where everyone you know is tired, fucking fatigued, counting the seconds on the clock, can barely keep their own head on straight? It's just gotta be something in the air. The way everybody's hauling ass to the office coffee pot or taking shots of espresso, stacking 5-hour energy shots on the counter like trophies of Olympian glory. Shit. Like you don't crush even harder, leaving you more desperate for something even vaguely resembling motivation to finish that piece of shit paper. Yeah, it ain't nothing in the air that punches you in the gut. Ain't the chemtrails those bitches keep going on about that make you feel that way. It's time travel. Fucking wears out the nation, makes politicians wet brain, but oh, it's better than anything. Let me tell you, I don't give a fuck about the alphabet. I don't know what I meant by that, but I think it's a great sentence. Okay. I just love messing with bitches from the past. They look at me like a freaking god. Either awe or fear. A bit of both on my good days. Sometimes I dress up like somebody who got lynched the day before. Somebody who made it to the papers in that fucked up front page way. Collective, sadistic as shit. I felt good about that, alright. But the best, oh, the fucking best, is to say who accused whom of witchcraft. Someone should later tell me if that was who or whom. Go to their house, and then to tell them their God is on the other line of my cell phone. If I don't freak them out with a fucking Furby next to their bed first. And you wonder about the recluses. They had a reason to stay indoors. Past is great. Get the right money and you can live for years. Fucking love inflation. Get a jukebox and a Ford 1949. roller skate waitresses and sweethearts for real. Not too good to eat the meat from a real while back though, and you gotta be careful with the laudanum. And in the fucking ice cream parlor, no less. Too many cranked out housewives too. I wish I could have shaken them loose and bottom to burn their bras and join the movement, but I gotta let them get angry enough to do it first. Gloria Steinem, she was nothing compared to the girls I could have taken to my time. The revolution would have been made with girls with finger curls. They wouldn't have had to take half of the shit they did. Of course, whenever I got drugs, I tried to see what fucked up artists I could patron. Charles Baudelaire was out of my league because of the French, but Edgar, my love, was brilliant. Brilliant. Don't know what he saw in that little bitch, though. About my jokes. The past is great. Just be careful. Have fun. No one ever goes to the future anymore. We've all had our fun going to 2012 just to say we did. But nobody ever goes to the future now. Not since poor FDR. The poor bastard never came back after an impulse trip to 3016. 3016? Yeah, okay. Jesus. Made a bet with the UN about the water supply. Never found out about the fluoride/acid reinsurance. But man, fucking 3016? We can only wonder what the fuck that was like. Yeah. Okay.
That was awesome.
Oh, thank you.
I love pieces like that like take like a genre trope like time travel and then just like totally subvert your expectations for how it's going to be used. I feel like most time travel stories really try to be like capital P profound when we all know we would just do the like silliest, most inane shit if we, if we could. And I think that piece, first of all, it was hilarious, but I think it absolutely captures that kind of like, just like wonderful, deranged silliness that would actually occur if like any of us had access to time travel,
I actually believed my ex-girlfriend when she told me that she moved all of Benjamin Franklin's pencils an inch to the left. So I can understand that. But also, it's so good to hear like positive feedback on something I wrote 10 years ago. It's like, finally. So thank you.
Oh yeah, that was fantastic.
Yay.
I want to hear how Rudy felt about this, because Rudy is always bitching at me about the use of time travel in like movies and fiction and shit. So I do want to hear Rudy's thoughts on this one.
Yeah, is he back from wherever he went?
Oh, what did he take off?
Yeah, I joked that he went to poop.
Oh, okay. Oh, my bad. Guess I
mean,
drew attention to the fact.
I know, Will, you and I and Rudy, we've all had discussions about the time travel stuff. You know that I hate it, but I love that piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you said you wrote that 10 years ago. That's really good for Tyler said in the chat. Like I wish something I wrote that long ago was that good.
Time travel fucks you up. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
last up is Michael, but I'm not sure. Michael said he might not be here until around 9:30, so it's a little early. Michael, are you with us? Oh. Okay, I haven't gotten any messages from him on Twitter yet. Is there anyone who wanted to read? Technically, it's not the open mic period yet, but who gives a shit?
Do any of you guys want to?
Not. I don't know if.
Read. I can read if no one's jumping at it.
Yeah, Tyler, why don't you do that? And then Michael will probably be in. He's our last reader for the night, so he'll probably be in here in the next 15 minutes or so, and he can go after Tyler. Though,
Yeah,
if
okay.
anyone, oh,
I
sorry.
can just read Red Mass, my first story on misery tourism.
Oh yeah,
You know,
that'd
make
be
it simple
awesome.
for everybody.
Let me dig out the link to that.
Yeah, okay.
There we go. All right, yeah.
Okay,
Take it away,
let me
Tyler.
pull it up also.
Okay.
There.
Also, if anyone would like to read, you can probably, I would say, start putting that in the chat. But I don't think Rudy's here at the moment to check the chat. So maybe just if just keep that in mind, and the next time I ask if somebody wants to read, just yell it out. Okay, Tyler, you can.
Okay. Everybody with me? All right.
Yep.
Okay, damn thing. Okay, there we go. The horses got out sometime around midnight by Bobby's estimation. The barn door showed no sign of being forced open, and her theory was that Dylan hadn't latched it. Mrs. Decker had called Bobby about 1, saying one of her palominos was hiding under the eave of her garage. Poor Bobby spent the rest of that storm driving around gathering up all the horses. Not like Bobby was getting any sleep anyway. I sure wasn't. I spent the night sweating, huddled under 3 comforters for protection. Every single thunderclap shook my house like a meteor strike, like a giant's footsteps. Beams groaned in the wind. Window panes rattled. I couldn't blame those horses for getting spooked. At one point, I even tried to take off, head downstairs away from the lightning and the hail and the wind throwing shorn leaves and sticks against my window. My parents were already on the couch, as was their habit during bad storms, because Mom was always convinced the huge tree outside their bedroom was going to blow over and crush them. I remember that night so clearly. I remember so much of what happened before, and so clearly. What came after makes up the bigger part of my life by now, and yet from then to now I barely remember anything. Nothing seems to stick. Bobby worked through the night. By noon the next day, all the horses were accounted for, except an American paint mare named Nibbles. I was the one who ended up finding Nibbles. I was walking along the river in the bright still of the afterstorm, seeing what had changed. The river had swelled out of its bed, and the rushing water had shorn huge globs of soil away from the banks. There was probably a good 2 feet missing all around. I would gingerly lay my foot on the edge, and heavy waterlogged chunks, glistening like flesh, would tumble in. I rounded a bend. Oh, lost my place. I rounded a bend coming to a familiar shady creek bed, and there was Nibbles. She had probably run in somewhere upriver and drowned. The current had carried her body down river a ways until it lodged there. Couldn't have been dead very long, but the smell was already powerful. It didn't smell sour like when meat goes bad in the fridge. There was a muddy, swampy overtone to the smell, a smell that coated my nose with guck and made my lungs feel heavier. I stayed there looking at her body for a long time. There was something I couldn't pick out, some slackness in her limbs, or the already apparent bloat of her trunk in the midday sun, which was ever so slightly misaligning her proportions, changing her form, her category. Sheriff Holder came out right away. I met him in the gravel lot at the head of the walking trail, and he used his skeleton key to unlock the steel dividers. Parks Department folks were swamped, he said apologetically. We drove down the trail, and I pointed out the spot Holder needed to turn off, and we followed the creek through the woods. Well, that's some shit, Holder said when he saw it. He was a little bleary. He'd spent the night in the sheriff's office because it was expected of him, which of course meant long stretches without much to pass the time with except a bottle of black velvet he kept inside the ammo locker. His young deputy, Colton, had been there too, and Holder had roped him into the festivities. It seemed Colton couldn't handle his liquor as well as Holder. When the smell hit him, he stopped dead like he just walked into a chain-link fence. Ugh, he groaned. Holder went back to his truck and made some calls over the walkie. He leaned out the window and told me to skedaddle. Thanks for letting us know, kid. We can handle things from here. I had no intention of leaving now, and I don't think you really expected that I would. But I got the hint and scurried back into the woods a ways, finding a wide oak trunk to hide behind and peek from afar. Bobby showed up first. Nibbles was a favorite of hers, a sweetheart, the one picked each year to teach all the first-year 4-H campers how to groom, since she always stood there like a saint on the pillory and let those kids' inexpert brushings scour her skin half off without chuffing or nipping them even once. Bobby was pissed. I'm gonna fucking kill that kid, she said. Another truck pulled up soon after. The only help Holder was able to rustle up. The big F-350 had Department of Natural Resources markings on the side and a big winch on its front bumper. The mulleted driver took the truck up to the very edge of the riverbank. The weight on that soft soil crumbled it under the truck's front tires like a cake beneath an elephant's foot. "The hell you doing?" shouted Holder. Frantically, the driver threw the truck into reverse and tried to back up before he tumbled into the river. The tires threw up a solid wall of pudding-soft mud 7 feet tall in front, completely drenching Bobby and Colton as well as Nibbles' corpse. After a few heart-stopping moments, the truck just barely managed to claw its way back to safety. Once the truck was on sure footing, the driver stepped out and got a horse sling from Bobby. The four walked down to the bank to Nibbles and tried to wrap her up. This was harder than it looked at first. Nibbles was jammed into the creek bed in an awkward position. No matter what they did, they couldn't get the sling completely around her. At one point, they had to sling just her front legs to try and lift her up enough to get enough room to slide the sling further down her plank. It took a couple of tries to get right. To make matters more complicated, Nibbles was lying on her left side, and her left hind leg was sunk into the soft mud almost halfway up her thigh. The mud was like quicksand and created a vacuum that pulled back harder and harder every time they tried to pull the leg out. Their efforts made reverberant sucking noises, loud enough to carry over to where I was. They must have tried pulling and rotating that leg this way and that for nearly an hour. Finally, they settled on a plan suggested by Cole, who was only a few Boy Scouts and vaguely remembered a lesson on how to get out of quicksand. They had to pull directly opposite the direction the leg stuck in, going slowly in many stages to let the mud fill in underneath the hoof. Doing this required the DNR man to move his truck parallel to the bank, and he almost fell in again. The truck's engine rumbled to a start, and the winch made a high whine as it started up. The cable went taut. I scrambled over to a clearing to get a better view of Nibbles through the trees. The cable went as it tightened. I saw Nibbles' body twitch and flex upward as if she'd been animated by electricity. I heard another loud sucking noise as the creek bed fought the winch, refusing to give up its prey. The driver eased his foot onto the gas pedal, adding the truck's pull to the winches. Holder motioned him with his hands to proceed slowly. The horse's body gave a small jerk and a bit of cable retracted. Holder was pressing his flattened hand down again, indicating more gas. The driver pumped the gas, and in one fluid motion, Nibbles' legs separated from her flank. The skin opened up as neatly as a slice of cheese pulled in half. Bones cracked, and ligaments tore, and flesh rent, and blood vessels snapped, and a long gouge appeared on the skin of Nibbles' belly and flank, releasing hundreds of pounds of dead, greasy-looking innards, which spilled in a pile and threw fluids everywhere within a 20-foot radius. Poor Colton completely lost it and began puking full-body heaves, leaning over with his legs spread and his head between his knees going, "Hoo-ah! Hoo-ah!" Vomit was a smooth salmon color, the consistency of pancake batter. It spattered over the mud, coating his shirt and made a long trail as it floated down the river, mixed with the blood and goo that was already painting the bank downstream. "Oh, God!" shouted Bobby. She pointed at Nibbles' intestines. Coating the long rubbery tubes were patches of an off-white substance, vaguely the same color and texture as cottage cheese, and as the intestines began unraveling in the river's current, the stuff was already coming loose, floating down the river, getting lost among the heaps of foam kicked up by the storm. "That's TB!" shouted Holder, motioning everyone away. "Horses don't get TB," Bobby answered. "What the hell is that?" You could probably guess what happened next. Water around the cottage cheese blob began to turn red. Not red like blood, but red like red house paint. And the red patches grew and spread out further and further from the blobs. In quite a short amount of time, the waters around Holder's and Bobby's feet were a deep red. They were standing in that stuff up to their knees. It's so weird to think about it now. I'm getting anxiety shivers just remembering it. "What do you think is going on with this stuff?" Holder asked. "It's going against the current." Bobby dipped her hands into the water and pulled out a large clump. The red mass was soft and sinewy, moist and seemingly run through with millions of tiny strings and filaments, like overcooked angel hair pasta, like grated ginger root. Though it could obviously move on its own, it sifted through Bobby's fingers and hung limp in her palm. Colton was standing a fair distance away on the tail end of the process of unloading his guts into the river. A long viscous spit connected to the river with his mouth. You can even notice that the red was spreading over to his area. The stuff had mounted the spit string and surged into his mouth. The effect was immediate. "Ugh, ugh," he cried. He had to have gotten a couple of ounces of the stuff in his mouth. He clawed his hands and scratched his throat frantically. "What's wrong?" demanded Bobby. Colton tried to answer, and instead of words, a saucer-sized glob of blood flew out of his mouth and landed in the river. He coughed and bent over, wheezing, face turning purple. He lost consciousness and fell right into Nibbles' torn out midsection, tangling himself up in her intestines. Holder jumped in to assist him. His leg flew out of the water. I could see his ankle where his sock rode down was covered with the red mass. Bobby looked at her own shorts-clad legs, and there was red matted on them straight up and down. She shrieked and tried to claw the red off. She rubbed and clawed with her fingernails and got some sort of tool out of her pocket and tried to pry it off. The tool came away bloody. Large sheets were ripped away, but Bobby's shins and calves were still wallpapered with red. I rushed over to them. The mulleted truck driver came with me. "Don't come any closer," Sheriff Holder warned. "Don't get it on you." Bobby collapsed into the river, sitting on the bottom, lifting one leg to scratch at it frantically. The mass seemed to be tightening somehow, squeezing blood out. Bobby's frenzied movements were making blood droplets rain into the river. Holder grimaced in pain, but tried to stay as he stumbled toward the riverbank. I glanced over at Colton lying inside Nibbles' abdomen. He was completely still, and the red mass was growing outwards in a ring around his mouth, like mold climbing out of a drain. Meanwhile, Nibbles' cavity was invaded by the mass. The driver had doubled back and was now haulering into his walkie. I looked at him for some sort of clue as to what to do. The look he shot me was so dazed, so displaced, the mute electric fear of the prey animal in dire flight. His eyes were like two white holes in the world. I turned around without another word and sprinted back to my parents, hovering at least 5 feet above the forest floor, zooming ahead insensate to uneven ground and logs that tripped, wanging my thigh on this, jamming a pinky toe on that. Over the coming days and weeks, I kept what happened on the back burner. I barked out my story to my parents as soon as I flew in the door. They were confused, to say the least. And by the time the strange outside events began to convince them there was something to what I was saying, it was too late to get the word out to anyone who could do anything. They're both gone now, barely lasted a week. From then on, I decided to keep it all to myself. What if people blamed me, I thought? What if they were right to do it? Logically, I knew someone else would have found the horse. Either that or she would have rotted away eventually and let all that shit into the river. It's no one's fault. I didn't put it in her. But who would see it that way? Figure it's safe now. No one will take it seriously anyway. Just file me away as another crank full of bullshit and pet theories. And even if I'm believed, what's the use of holding a grudge now? That happened outside Redfield, a little town on the Raccoon River. flows into the Des Moines River, where it's the main drinking water reservoir for the Des Moines metro area. 600,000 souls, or was. From then on into the Mississippi. Once that happened, it was all over.
First of all, like the delivery on that was fucking spectacular. you really went all out on those dry heaving noises, and I appreciate that kind of commitment. but above and beyond that, what I really love about this piece, and what I loved about it when you submitted it to us, is how much, like, the very precise and like horrifying level of detail that you put into like the mundane act of trying to remove that horse's body from the river. And I think what makes that, I think that kind of just like excruciating level of detail into those mundane things makes that like horrifying, like quasi sci-fi payoff at the end really work, because you 100% believe in the like reality of the world that this takes place in, because you just spent the first 2/3 of the story in this little hick town, like finding out, like, you know, the sheriff, like, you know, hides his flask of whiskey in the ammo closet, and like focusing on just like the precise mechanics of trying to drag a dead horse out of a creek bed. And so you 100% buy it when everything goes to shit. So I really, really like that about it.
Yeah, thanks. That like sci-fi apocalypse twist ending wasn't originally on there. Like, I asked my girlfriend how I should end this story, and she's like, a fucked up plague that kills everybody. And you know what? She was right.
Yeah, no, that was a really, really smart idea, because that shift is so unexpected, and yet it works so perfectly.
Yeah, I think I just want to like second that it's crazy how like developing the like gruesome process of pulling the horse out, like not only does it kind of set you up to be like something's going to go wrong, but it pulls you in the way it kind of like demands your attention, and then at that point you're in. So it's just like kind of a good device in that sense, and it definitely worked in your case.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, that was like one of the most brutal stories I've ever heard.
Really?
I was in my basement, like rooting through all of my possessions, trying to find what box I packed my cigarettes in while you were reading that, and it was like really a nice visceral accompaniment of the story about the horse being pulled apart and stuff. And yeah, I absolutely agree about the stuff that it like works to let it go wherever, because it is just so vivid. And like, if this had remained at the level of just being like a completely like realistic story of a horse getting torn apart, it also would have been absolutely disgusting. And it's just like a logical spinning out of that. So yeah, I really loved that.
Yeah, that's why I kind of like to mix genres, you know, especially in the middle of the story. I like to throw a sort of jarring thing in there.
What do you?
Yeah.
Wait, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, like what Scott said about the excruciating process of just like before the horse's leg comes off, just the sucking of the mud and like the drudgery of it. Like, it makes it so that once it starts spreading in the river, you really have a grasp of like, what can you do to take it out? Like, you cannot clean it. It's every single thing requires manpower, and just how hopeless that is. Like any outdoor chore, like, yeah, I don't know, it just really worked.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I think Michael is here. Are you with us, Michael?
I am indeed. I am. Sorry I could not get here sooner.
Oh, no problem. No problem. So I think you're our last scheduled reader.
Okay, cool.
Anyone wants to read in the open mic afterwards, just kind of keep that in mind. I don't think, Rudy, are you back yet? No, I don't think Rudy's back yet, and I'm terrible about tracking the chat. So just let me know when Michael's done if you want to read in the open mic. Okay, it's all yours.
All right. Sorry. Let me see. I think I'll read this one. This is an older poem from a book I self-published back in 2016. I have not read this one in a long time, so let's see how it goes. It's called Dark Water. I got to thinking last night after my heart fell out of rhythm like a freight train off its tracks, that I'm not the man I used to be, the man I thought I would become. And now outside my window, headlamp stamps and luminescent slashes up and down the smoke-stained pane. And I sit up sharply, hands pawing at my chest to see if the answers to all my questions course through my veins. You're just nuts, I tell myself. You're losing it. My lips feel dry, sand dry. You're losing it, I tell myself again. I lower my head down onto the pillow, and the coolness of the cloth laps like dark water against my ears. As I lie there, I wonder if there's truth in the weakness of my bones, the stumbles of the beat in my chest. I sit up, feeling cold against these sweaty sheets. I look to the empty glass on the bedside table, water drained in panic 2 hours before. More cars slip by outside the window, casting flashes, the edges of light, the same. What I fear is that I'll lose everything, all at once. My eyes unable to grasp light, my ears unable to welcome sound. Now I'm in the living room, hunched on the couch, a cartoon splashed in bright color swirls on the TV. A new glass of water feels heavy, warm in my hand. I think back to a young couple on a bus 5 years before, two ponchos wrapped up in one another, their heads too filled with love in the now to see the looks on the faces around them. I wonder if they're still together as I dash 2 pills down my throat and feel their weight sag into my chest. I hope they are, I think, draining the glass to all but its dregs. The time on the cable box grows older. My love is asleep in the next room, an intimate ridge in dark sheets, blood warm, a rhythm you can breathe with. I should go, I tell myself, but first I need to finish writing this down. Enjoy it, all of it. Don't let those sparks of panic in your veins make you afraid to keep running. A heart beats too quick for that. I set the pen down, unsure if this is enough. A cat laces his form through my legs, and I bend to scratch his spine. Then my heart jumps once, twice, before it settles on its jagged path. When I'm back in bed, I breathe slowly, lying in my side, arms slung over her, hands webbed in the darkness. My thoughts are still there, rattling like teeth in a soup can, but they're fading now, falling to the floor one by one. And here, for tonight at least, I can stop writing this endless poem and go to sleep. So that's the first one.
That was so good. I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah. I just commented in the chat. I'm sorry, but yeah.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I have not read that. I have not looked at that poem in quite a long time, so I appreciate that. Sorry, some of these are really old.
Are we friends on Twitter?
I think we might be.
Okay. Okay, sorry.
Hang on. I'm just making decisions long after I should have. Okay, this one I wrote back like right after college, but I always liked it, so I will read it. It's called Goodbye. Today at the coffee shop I call part-time home, I watch the sunshine bleach the windows white. Voices mingle with the hum of the coffee machine and the shuffle of dollars in the register as customers come and go, their fingers smudging the doors. I think of you, how you used to come each day to kiss the rim of a porcelain cup, and how the heat of the dark coffee rose in a fog that never quite obscured your smile. Next, I knew I was with you, finding truths on aimless drives down starlit highways, finding truths in the darkness of warm sheets and cigarettes through your open window, finding truths on a jettied beach where we watched thunderstorms graze the ocean coast with their teeth, and finding truths at the coffee shop table where you knew you had to stand up, then walk away from my bullshit. At the end of the day, business here is slow, butter slow, and the few staggered college grads still gripping their laptops and begging for jobs drape themselves across chairs like forgotten clothes. They smile at me and look away with opiated eyes. I think of you, somewhere far, enjoying yourself, and I remember that I never actually said goodbye. But from here, all I can do is hand out small cups of hope and win you back inside my head. Thank you.
Dan, I love your poetry.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's spectacular. I love, first of all, your delivery matches the content and the like cadence of the poetry like perfectly. But I really love the like mix of that almost like trance-like, like kind of just very gentle cadence of the poetry with you have a real knack for picking like really perfect details. Like Eris put in the chat, like the opiated eyes, like that mix of those kind of just kind of subtly wonderful details and the cadence of the piece. It really like envelops you. It really drags you in, and you kind of lose a sense of like space and time while you're listening.
Thank you.
So
Appreciate
I
that.
really appreciate that.
When I don't know if anyone is familiar with the work of Yusuf Kamanyaka. It's really, really good poet. I heard him speak when I was in college, and he read, and it just, I don't know, just the way he could deliver. I mean, he was just like reading jazz. And ever since then, I was like, if I can even do like 1% of what that guy is able to do, highly recommend checking out Yusuf Kamanyaka if you get the chance. Yeah, let me write that.
Reading jazz is like a perfect encapsulation of like what I was struggling to say. That really is kind of the experience. And I'll have to check him out. I haven't read any of his work.
Yeah. That one line about getting up from the table and walking away from my bullshit, I wanted to raise a glass to you on that. That was magnificent.
Thanks.
I really dug the rhythmicism of your poems, especially that first one. I remember thinking that it's sort of evoked the feeling of a heartbeat during a panic attack. And then the way it slowed in the end was just perfectly evocative.
Thank you. Yeah, that one, I think I wrote that back in, had to be like 2013, 2014. I mean, I did an edit on all these poems back in like 2016, but I haven't touched any of these in a long time. So it's fun to look back on them. But I appreciate the comments.
It's always weird when you look at stuff of yours from so long ago, you know, it's like pulling something out of a fridge and seeing what's grown on it.
Yeah.
There are some in that book that definitely have not stood the test of time, but I think a couple of them definitely did.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just, if you had something to say, Eris, definitely. I was just going to kind of pivot to the open mic, but.
Oh, okay. Well, so the Jane really liked my poem Sink, like the white feather one, and that was also really, really old. So that's it. Okay.
Yeah, I've been reading the few times that I have read for this, I've often dug up like shit from 4 or 5 years ago, and sometimes you're like, oh. But other times you're like, hey, you know what? This is maybe you know, I'm not as bad as I think I am. So it's always good when you can read something and then get that kind of response from people and say, hey, you know what? Maybe I have some semblance of an idea of what I'm doing here.
I feel a lot better about that book now. That was very validating. So thank you.
And thank you for coming and reading.
No, thanks for having me. I've been meaning to. I've been busy these last Fridays, but I was around tonight, so I appreciate the slot.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. This has been so much fun. And every week I'm like, well, this is going to be the week that nobody shows up and we have to stop doing these. And every week people want to read, and every week it's a ton of fun. So it's great. So yeah, I do want to thank everyone that read. Tyler, Patrick, Michael, Hestia, Eris. Um, Somebody's name is escaping me. Let me just sorry about this.
SG?
Yeah, Sam. Sorry, Sam, Hestia, Patrick, Eris, Michael, everyone. Thank you so much for coming and reading. And
Thank you.
we have time. I'm going to leave this open for a while, so we have time for an open mic period here if anyone wants to read. Especially since I can't bully Rudy into reading tonight, since he's not here at the moment.
I do have something to read. I'm just uploading it to Google Docs now.
Cool.
Because it's a
Yay. Oh, wait.
it's actually a webcomic format. I know Will has seen this.
Oh yeah. Yes. Okay. This is good because this is like early pandemic core stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. You should, if you have the drawings and stuff to accompany it, you should definitely put links to those as well.
Should be going in shortly here.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the Eris asked about the piece I wrote a while ago. What was it? Like 5 places I see every day where I want to hang myself or something. I think that piece was from 2016. I want to say maybe 2017. So it's 3 or 4 years old now. Yeah. Oh man, Hestia, that sounds like a great idea. Speaking of which, if anyone has, I tweeted about this, but next week's Misery Loves Company is going to fall on 9/11. So if anyone has any, let's say, thematically appropriate pieces to read on 9/11, we'd love to have you come and read those. You all set, B-Boy?
Should be, if anyone wants to make sure that this link works, because I know I had that issue last time.
Yep, let me check. Works for me.
All right. So a little background on this piece. This was going to be a submission for Misery Tourism, and basically general laziness and dissatisfaction with a finished piece once it's done, blah, blah, blah. Then coming to realize, oh shit, this all got a little too real compared to what was real at the time of writing it.
I'm going to tweet out the link to this just so you know, if it's okay.
Yeah, by all means.
Okay, cool.
All right. And obviously, as mentioned, as mentioned before, I have been working as an essential worker through all of this nonsense. So a little perspective from the front lines. So this is the breakdown, the collapse, the fall. Look around yourselves. People panicking over pandemics to gain leverage over panhandling pantheists with painstaking precision. Prodding and poking and persecuting like perverts and prefects, perfecting precursors of punishment in the process of perfunctory provocation. Where's my toilet paper? Where's my hand sanitizer? Where are my face masks? Shouts and screams at social structures intended to support supplicants to some societal sanitary sacrificial altar. Something stoic stirs. Strict strains on supply chains suggest you can't simply satisfy them all. Shortcomings and shortages sustain short-tempered Stepford wives smiling until the surface facade fades away from the forefront and falters into fuck yous. Freedom's forbidden from forming full-fledged formalities and full-force falsehoods. Why can't we go golfing? Why can't we have our tea socials? What are you doing to protect us all? Bullshit. Brashly brandishing Baroque embellishments of barely breathing but boldly emblazoned blathering bitches baffled by the black of cleaning products complemented by coordinated consumption of their same coiffed compatriots. Collective cravings for Clorox and Purell and desperation dredging up divisive derision and destructive dissension in the ranks. Do you have any thermometers? Do you have any aloe gel? Why don't you have any zinc? It's God's will. Why wouldn't we want to wash our hands and with winsome frivolity? Furiously frenzied focus, first in line and finally frothing over whatever we want to hear. How hard is it to hurry out and happily hoard heaping piles of bottles upon bottles of barely effective burdens on the broken down disciples of the discordant destroyers of the retail domain? Definitive desolation is the deterministic dogma of the desperate. I've got to ask, right? No harm in asking. Sorry, I'm sure you get sick of me ask that. Everyone is a comedian.
I think I don't know if it was Rudy or me who described that as like basically what P for pandemic instead of V for vendetta.
Yep.
I do think that I love the kind of comic alliteration there because I think it kind of takes I love the contrast between what's like essentially a rant from an essential worker and like the almost like comic villain like cadence to it. I really like it. Kind of elevates it, the fact that it's like on the one hand it's this really like yeah working retail during a pandemic fucking sucks, but on the other hand it has that really like manic like supervillain energy to it that just twists the whole thing in a wild direction.
And then the really fun thing was I drew up that webcomic, I think it was the day after I wrote it. Because I remember showing you guys the first look at it.
Yeah.
And then it was a week and a half later that everything happened with George Floyd and the whole country broke out into riots and looting. And I realized, maybe having an essential worker throwing a Molotov cocktail may not be the best look right now.
Yeah, I do. I think you actually may have done the illustrations that same night because all I remember is you were drunk as shit and you were talking to us about it.
Yeah, as is when I do most of my creative work these days.
I don't know how, but the alliteration made you sound so much angrier.
There's a percussive quality to it. It builds so quickly, and once you get started, it's hard to slow down.
That has to be it. It's like you're pounding on a drum or something.
Yeah, I have to say, like I guess like the sonic kind of quality of it. It seems very like, obviously technically crafted. You spent some time with that, but it comes across really like even if you're not picking up on exactly what's happening, like things are happening. Like even if you don't even know the terms, like that are you just feel the rhythm of it and everything. So really well done.
Thank you.
To the fact that it's like kind of goofy feels kind of appropriate because it does feel like this whole thing has been kind of a like goofy apocalypse. Like there's been so many just weird twists this year. I'm just thinking of like the one that's really standing out to me right now was like the week where Joe Biden couldn't figure out how to work Zoom, and so everyone was like trying to figure out if he was dead or not. But like there's been so many things like too, the like injecting bleach into your veins and like I don't know, all this different shit. The fact that it's from the fucking pangolin, which is like the cutest looking animal in the world, it kind of deserves this treatment also.
Yeah, the absurdity of everything was really part of what kind of drove the writing process of this. And the scary thing is, it sounds like it took a lot of time. I think I did this in like 45 minutes after the first, what was it? It was the plague reading session that I sat in on, if I remember right.
Oh yeah, that's right. R.I.P. plague readings. But yeah, I think that was so. That must have been oh, must have been late April because I think that was, if I remember correctly, that was on Good Friday. I only remember because I read that, like, my religious themed Good Friday pieces. I think that was the same one. I may be
Yeah, I
conflating a
think
few of them
so.
in my head at the moment. Does anyone else have a piece they'd like to read?
I have a couple. If that works.
Cool. Yeah, take it away.
Sure. Just I feel like a poem is bad if you have to explain it, but so who's on Macs and who's on Windows? Like, do we have a mix here? Because there's a hotkey. You can press Command F. Does everybody know that function? Yeah. Or Control F if you're on Windows. So I'm a Mac user, so this poem's gonna use Command F. But if you're a Windows user, just imagine I'm saying Control F, and it will be compatible with your device. So this one's called Hotkeys. I also ripped off Talend a little bit with this, but whatever. Hotkeys. Command F, coping mechanisms. Command F, self-respect. Command F, cocaine. Command F, a sense of shame. Command F, character growth. Command F, conflict resolution. Command F, validation. Command F, personal boundaries. Command F, Adderall brand Adderall. Command F, serotonin. Command F, my girlfriend's clitoris. 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 Bukowski made himself out to seem like a great lover. I did the opposite. Terrible, terrible lover. Next one's library. I call to helplines on subway ads, look for answers in phone books. I have an encyclopedic knowledge of failure, and I'm a glossary of defeat. What's a synonym for all this? My life seems beyond definition, only because nobody's come up with terminology so bizarre, vernacular so flawed. I read WebMD entries to satisfy my neuroses. There are sick plot twists in books about the Bermuda Triangle that I read as a kid. And the last one is Tampa Bay Rays, and it starts off with a Steinbeck quote, which, whatever. But the poem won't make sense without the quote, so, The quote, they are virtues, the graces, the beauties of the hurried, mangled craziness of Monterey and the cosmic Monterey, where men in fear and hunger destroy their stomachs in the fight to secure certain food, where men hungering for love destroy everything lovable about them. I'm sitting in a bar thinking about that quote from John Steinbeck, the part about men so desperate for love that they destroy all that is lovable about themselves. I just ordered a half G and another pint. Lately, I've noticed that my two front teeth, which stick out, are sharper. I think the booze is wearing away the ends. And that's why Steinbeck comes to mind. That, and I'm also bloated. My face is red, and I weigh more than I used to. I came here after dropping off my ex's keys. My ex who tried to extort me for $5,000 because, well, I criticized her labia via text message. I only did that after she commented on my teeth. Both are so personal, labia and teeth. They're playing baseball on the TVs here in the bar. It's the Toronto Blue Jays versus the Tampa Bay Rays. The game is in Tampa, and they have this fish tank set up in the stadium. It's filled with actual stingrays. Between shots of baseball, the camera keeps panning to harried stingrays, swimming around the fifth deck in circles. They don't know what the fuck is going on. It's a petting zoo, and grubby children are molesting the stingrays. The possibilities of misery are endless. The stingrays were in the ocean, then they weren't. Now they're trapped in an enclosure in an MLB stadium. I want to join them, to be with my kind, in a general state of confusion. And yeah, that's
Yeah.
In a general state of confusion. That's a good, really funny line to end on.
Yeah. I love like the like hilarious like modernity, I guess, of your pieces, like, or I don't know, post-modernity, whatever. Like the I've read a few, you've read a few poems here, and I've read a few of the others, and I really love that, like, the sense of that, like, one moment from, like, our deranged world, and that sense of, like, kind of hilariously trying to find some kind of sense of direction or sense of coherence in a world that's just, like, fundamentally, like, batshit. And I really appreciate that about your work, you know?
Well, thanks for that. I mean, I know that I have some stuff forthcoming on Misery Tourism, so thank you for putting that out. And I know that the stuff I sent was similar in tone. And yeah, that's what I want to do, because I like any work that kind of, you take the worst experiences of your life, and if you can turn it into even a stupid online poem, it still, you know, makes it seem like less terrible to have to live through that moment, basically. Yeah. So, but thanks. I'm glad that got through, I think. Yeah. I've gotten better with women since I wrote that.
Just want to put that disclaimer out there.
It was written early on. I was a late bloomer, so not early on, but just, yeah, just.
Right.
Take your word for it, bud.
So who's does anyone else have something they'd like to read?
I guess I could read. I've been like kind of tossing it around in my head whether I want to read this because I don't have the ending that I want, but it ends on it. It's kind of just like a strange, thing. The bulk of the story, I think, is the way it is. So it's more just the ending. But I could read it.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Okay, and because it doesn't have an ending, I haven't come up with a good title for it yet. So, all right. It was his birthday, and they let everyone know it. Thousands of low-hanging Christmas lights started pulsing when the maitre d' made the announcement. Indiscriminate colors throbbed as song rose up around us, and a small choir of waiters began a choreographed performance around their table. There was a man in the back. He was chained up to the radiator, and he looked hungry. And though he wouldn't admit it if you were to ask, he was very hungry. He clung to a box attached to the wall by some wires. Another one, they said to him in some other language, and when he heard them, he clicked some buttons, pushed up some faders, and the lights started to dance in the restaurant. I was at a table for 9. You really could barely move your arms. The place was small, and the chairs were crammed together and butting out into the singular walkway that ran down the center of the room. An absolute fire hazard. The waiters hurried up and down, swinging huge trays of steaming food just above our heads. If one of them drops, I thought, that's it. This is all over. But the place looked old, and they were better than that. The waiters were dexterous, weaving gracefully between chairs, tables, patrons, and each other. And they were expressionless, too. This was rote. This was flow. One leapt over me, effortlessly moving his tray from his right to left hand mid-flight in a stunning maneuver. 10 out of 10. And listen to me when I tell you the food was spicy. This was serious stuff. I was really sweating within the first couple bites. There were chunks, some sort of licorice root mixed into it too. I hate licorice, but damn, the rest of it was good. The song was hurrying along. The birthday table was cheering and laughing, clapping in unison. The pulsating lights were following the tempo on the song, which was halving and doubling periodically. The birthday man, who otherwise looked very stern and severe, was clearly pleased with the display. And then the desserts came out. A fleet of intricate marzipan structures. tantalizing Dravidian temples, Mesopotamian ziggurats, and immaculate, a thing that I can only write and not pronounce properly, all whirling above the huddled masses, who couldn't help but watch. The waiters floated through the crowd, unfazed by the almost maddening light show. They were gyrating with the music, bouncing lightly on the balls of their feet. They neared the birthday table as the song came to a crescendo, and as the trays landed, the music cut off on a triumphant harmony. But the lights continued. The host officiating the ceremony was visibly worried. He was clasping his hands apologetically, making exaggerated gestures toward the lights. The birthday man, having grown suddenly infinitely ancient, was scowling. I couldn't hear anything that was said, but I understood that this was not an intended part of tonight's events. God, I felt bad for him, but there wasn't much I could do. I'd just broken into a particularly large piece of licorice root and was working hard stifling the vomit rising in my throat. The lights were nearly strobing now, truly disorienting. What if there's a goddamn epileptic in here? I remember thinking as I choked down the root. I couldn't take my eyes off the table. The birthday man had turned away from the host, who was still pleading with him. The rest of the table was attempting to console him, but to no avail. He was, in fact, inconsolable. The temperature was literally rising, too. Something must have happened with the thermostat when the lights started malfunctioning. Sweat was filling my eyes, but I saw that the birthday man, sweating too, was shuffling his way out of the restaurant with his party in tow. The untouched sculptures were beginning to melt, liquefying down into multicolored rivulets flowing through the bases of latticed inedible greens. And suddenly everyone was getting up to leave, even my friends. People drenched in sweat were trampling each other to get to the door. It was so hot the sweat was stinging my eyes, and the taste of anise was still strong in my mouth. The host pointed two of the dessert waitresses, both in peak physical form, to the far end of the room, then sat down among the warped structures with his head in his hands. The waitresses hurried toward the back room, the one with the chained man. They beat the shit out of him. They didn't even care to close the door behind them. I got up and I went to the maitre d'. I motioned with my hand at the desserts. Guess we better eat these before they go bad, huh? I said with a hiccup of laughter. I watched a dripping turquoise spire bending, curving further and further until it pointed exactly downward. I went to pull it apart, but 4 delicate hands, 2 on each arm, grabbed a hold of me, dragged me through the heat and strobing lights, and sent me out the front door and rolling down the stairs. And that's it.
Is culinary horror a genre? Because if so, between this piece and the garlic piece that you read last time, you would be like one of the guiding lights of that genre. I do like, you have a real mastery of like the physicality of like social awkwardness. I don't know if that makes any sense, but like the connection between feeling socially uncomfortable and feeling physically uncomfortable is really like vividly realized in your work. And I think that's kind of rare, because I think people kind of tend to like bifurcate those things when they're writing. And I really like the way the two like complement each other in your work.
Yeah, thank you. That's like something that's just like a huge source of humor for me. And I just think it's just hilarious to write about. And that's why I still keep on, like, I hold on to that piece, even though I don't really have the ending I want. There's so many just like bizarre things about it. And it's like mostly true too. It's like kind of a true story, which is another reason I want to like, finish it properly. But yeah, it's just full of those awkward things like that. So,
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. And it's funny, the garlic one was kind of loosely based on a true story too. So I think it's having
that's
that.
only what I can write.
But I think there's something to having that like sense of perspective or vision or whatever, to have something happen to you and to say, I see like what's meaningful about this, like either what's like hilarious about this or what's awkward about this, and then being able to like capture that essence and then repurpose it for a story, I think is a real skill. Did anyone else want to have a shot here at reading?
I've got another piece read, but I've been going back and forth on it. First off, it's got a happy ending, which is kind of illegal on this stream. Second off, it's kind of long, so I don't know if I should just wait till other week's reading or what.
It's up to you. I mean, we are kind of coming near the end here, but if you want to maybe sign up for next week, if it's a longer piece, that might make probably a little more sense, and then you can be kind of one of the featured readers then. Does that work?
Okay, yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah. So do we have anyone else here who would like to read something tonight?
No, just wanted to say thanks for the platform. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, Josh, thanks for coming, and thank you everyone for coming. I think I will end the recording there and kind of end the reading there, but as usual, I will leave the Zoom call open if people want to, bullshit, socialize, whatever. So if you're watching this, if you're watching the archive video of this and you made it all the way to the end, kudos, and I guess thank you. We do this every Friday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. And if you're watching this, maybe you should stop by next time. And if you'd like to read, hit us up on Twitter, send us a DM at Misery Tourism, or shoot an email to submissions@miserytourism.com. All right, thank you everyone, and thanks again to everyone who read tonight. I really, really love these things, and I really love the turnout that we've had.